The hour has arrived. It is 7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Actually, do we have, yeah, got everybody. We are recording. I'd like to call the meeting to order at now 7:01. First off, we have our board norms. This is maintain our focus, communicate respectfully, be present, keep the board productive and effective, and respect the agenda. Those are our board norms. All right, and I believe we also have, I don't know if Bill is on, but I think we do have some additions and deletions. And is Bill not on? There he is.
He's there, he's muted.
Bill, I don't know if you can hear me, but you'd mentioned some additions and deletions?
Al, are you looking for me?
Yes, sir.
I didn't hear what you said before. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You'd mentioned some additions and deletions.
No, I forgot to put that on the agenda. So I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity for additions and deletions. And one addition I had is after board norms, correspondence. We received some correspondence that Dana and Keegan forwarded from a constituent, and it is in your board packet. I don't know if Keegan or Dana would like.
It was related to a parent's concerns around the delayed or like the remote week following vacations, and a parent just expressing some feelings around if everyone in the community has been following the expectations, why are we continuing to delay in-person instruction? And the principal, Pam, had responded by saying, you know, it's out of an abundance of caution. We're still maintaining safety protocols. We're still following those safety guidelines that we had all agreed to as a board. But it was some outreach from a community member, and we wanted it to just be included. I don't know if Dana wants to add anything to that about that email that we received.
Yeah, the community member was looking for a statement from the board as our position and maybe reconsideration of our position.
And I'm sorry, the position that they're asking us to reconsider is?
To not have a remote week after vacations, to just bring everyone back to in-person right out of the gate. And because it was a board decision to delay based on providing opportunity for everyone to quarantine and to be remote, both students and staff, I didn't offer a reply of, sure, let's do that, especially since we are so close to that kind of return and it's kind of already been planned for and banked on, but acknowledging this community member's position and opinion, I think is important.
Absolutely. We certainly need to listen to our constituents who pay the taxes, send the children to school. Very, very important. And I would probably concur with one thing you said, which is we're pretty close to that time frame. Essentially, we're, you know, within a day or so of making a decision or altering a decision, and I'm sure that a lot has gone into planning the after vacation timing. And Bill, I don't know if you want to speak to that in terms of how difficult that would be to make that change, or if we even want to bring it up for consideration.
I would just say that you're correct, that all the teachers and principals have been planning to provide that instruction after the break. It would be challenging at this time to switch for communication purposes would be a big switch. People have already kind of made the arrangements. That was part of the board's decision, was making sure that you guys gave enough time to people to get prepared. You know, we are prepared, obviously, if there's a case to go remote quickly. So we have developed that skill, but knowing as far in advance as we did, we are able to truly prepare in a more formalized fashion. I think that's about it.
Great. Thanks, Bill. And yeah, I mean, and also, unfortunately, a lot of what we had hoped would not happen is playing out not only in Vermont, but throughout the country in terms of COVID just really, really ramping up and becoming a pretty bad thing right now, and probably about the worst we've seen. So, but we certainly appreciate and we all want to have our kids back in school. I certainly don't want to have 4 Zooms going at the same time in my house anymore either. But yeah, no, we appreciate it. Bill, was there any other correspondence?
That is the only correspondence that I have for the board.
Okay. Excellent. And looks like we do have a few members of the public. Thank you. Appreciate you coming and being involved in this. Let's see. Let's move on to new business. Announced tuition 2021-2022. This is you.
Good evening, everybody. I don't have Burton's rates yet. Usually I like to sort of hear where they're going to come out before we announce a tuition, but I do have it on good authority that what percentage they're looking to go up. So I would recommend currently, hold on, I got 7 spreadsheets here. Currently, kindergarten and elementary are at 14.4 for West River, and I would recommend going to 14.8. And the secondary is at 17.9, and I would recommend going to 18.4 for 18,400.
And Lori, that was K through elementary and then 8?
Yes, K through elementary is 14,800.
Yep.
And secondary 18,400. It's a 2.8% increase year over year.
All right. I
Lori, do you need a motion? Does the board need a motion on it?
Yes,
yeah,
please.
I would like that, make the motion to raise the tuition.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Lindsay. All right. As the motion makers, do you have anything to say about that, Ken or Lindsay?
Nothing for Ken, just inflation.
Okay. Any other discussion? Keegan.
I'm just curious to clarify around the cutoff that we're using. I know that Leland and Gray encompasses 6 through 12. What does this district constitute tuition-wise as elementary? Is that the end of 5th or is that 8th grade? I'm just curious where.
It goes K through 5 for this district.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question, Keegan. All right. Any other questions, thoughts? All right. Let's, all those in favor say aye or thumbs up. Please put your camera on if you can. Thank you. All right. It appears as though we are unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 unanimous.
Great.
Thank you. All right. Lori, I think the next one's just going to be brief, maybe like 5 minutes or something like that. But maybe not. So Lori is going to present to you this amazing presentation that she gave the Budget Committee a week ago on FY22. Just when you think that Lori can't step it up another notch, she does. It is a very thorough presentation, and she actually did have the ability to have more information than normal before time, so we actually look all the way through to back grade. So this has been a real bonus, and the ability to see this far ahead and this far in advance.
Definitely helpful.
Yeah. So, if Joe, would you be able to share the document?
You want the PowerPoint, right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yep, just let me get it open here and I will share it.
And Lori, as he's doing that, I assume we probably want the same kind of format that we had last time where, as we have questions as they come along, feel free to go ahead and ask.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So I think it's, I like to answer the questions as we go. I think it's important to follow through the thought process. So, after each slide, I'll stop and take questions and we can talk through.
Sounds great.
Whoa.
All right.
That didn't work.
Do you have it on the PDF? You can just share the PDF.
You trying to put it in presentation mode?
I was trying to put it in presentation mode, and I put it in presentation mode on the other screen, and all of a sudden I couldn't see anything. Yeah, it should just be. You can see my screen. You can see it. You just see the annoying stuff down the side, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's okay.
Like, why can't it? When I put it in presentation mode, it goes on my other screen, and I can't get it to move over.
Do you have the PDF that I sent out instead?
Yes, hold on.
Because that'll give you the full screen, I think.
Did you send it?
I did on Friday. I have it up if you want to give me sharing privileges.
Hold on here. There it is. Oh. Yeah, I'll have it in 2 seconds.
Okay, great.
Close that.
It's actually, I think it was updated a little bit too since that other one.
Download. Share screen. Share. Okay, there. Sorry for the technical glitches, but
No worries. All right, we can go right ahead to the first screen, first slide. Okay, so what's included in this first look? The tax rate is calculated using fiscal year 21 equalized pupils as part of the hold harmless provision that the legislature put in place for fiscal year 22. So before we move off of this one, actually, I do have some even more updated information since I sent this out. And I have the first pass of the fiscal year 22 equalized pupils. And it's slightly up at 514.66, about 2 cents on the tax rate. So not significant, but I would actually like to, well, we'll come back to it. At some point, I want to share with you how they got to that calculation and what the actual ADM count was for this year, because it was significantly less, about 37 students. Hang on one second. I got to get to my right spreadsheet. Yeah, so the ADM count for fiscal year, or for 21 that we just went through, was 32.99 students, down from the previous ADM count. So that would have had a devastating effect on your equalized pupil. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this, that the 21 count was down 33 students.
Lori, what's the before and after on that? So what was in 21 and then, I'm sorry, 20, 21?
Yeah, so 20 was 512.69.
Okay.
So very close to what your equalized pupil ended up to be. And then 21, and again, these are ADM counts, was 479.70.
And would you say that a lot of that loss may potentially come back post-COVID?
I think some of it will. I think some of it is the homeschool effect that is happening because of COVID. I can't say that all of them will come back. There were, other reasons people left the area, and, so it's very hard to really look out to fiscal year 23's equalized pupil count for that reason, but also is how will it be handled next year when they do the ADM count, and because it's a 2-year rolling average, right? So are they going to revert back and use that 472 number or 479 number as, 21? Or are they going to use the 20 number that was basically doubled, right? So I actually had an audience, a rare audience with Brad James today, and he doesn't know the answer either, and is going to be starting to pressure, to find out these answers, because you can imagine that if it's a 2-year rolling average, even if your count comes back up to where it was, you're still going to be dealing with that 479 number next year. Okay,
Gotcha.
So
that'll be 512.
Yeah, so understand that is, it's not going up. I guess that's the answer to that. So staffing changes that occurred after the fiscal year 21 budget was approved, that is in this first draft. Negotiated and non-certified staff increases, benefit changes. This includes the 10% increase in premiums, and also, the application of the mandated healthcare law. Increases and decreases from the approved WCSU superintendent's budget, special ed budget, and the proposed fee for service, which was the agency fund budget. Made some adjustments based on actuals where it was applicable, up and down, both increases and decreases. And then what is in this budget that is presented are increases based on repairs and maintenance costs. So we were able to get all of the HVAC maintenance, yearly maintenance estimates, and those are included in this budget. Also some student staff counts and ratios, and some regional comparisons. Go ahead, Joe. Okay, so one back. One forward. Oh, okay, one more. There you go. Okay, so the year-over-year
You're a
expense
slave
budget.
driver.
Sorry.
No.
So the year-over-year expense budget comparison between fiscal year 21 and 22 is $175,000 up, which is 1.46. So first look, that's not a bad increase. Some of that increase, actually being a small increase, is due to some decreases in the budget. One of which is the Newbrook HVAC system loan was paid off this year, so that was around $66,000. There was also some reductions in the special ed budget that flowed through to West River, and also the superintendent's budget, which we can look at when we get to the budget. All right. So here's where the news becomes not so good, is the offsetting revenues. So of course you have your expenses, and then you take off all of the offsetting revenues for, and for those in the, you know, on the call that aren't familiar with offsetting revenues, these are all the other revenues that are figured in that come from grants. They come from our Medicaid funding, which is a grant. It comes from tuition, from students attending Leland and Gray or other schools from outside of the district. So those revenues are projected to be down 24%. Most of this is in the tuition at Leland and Gray being down. I was telling the budget committee that in fiscal year 20, we budgeted 49 students. And then for this year, I budgeted 45, but we've only billed on 33. So it's also affecting this year's budget, about $200,000 down. So next year I'm budgeting 29, and those are based on information that I get from all of the sending towns. So the biggest portion of that 303 is from the tuition being down. So that's about 270. The other reductions are in some of the grants. Medicaid is down also pretty significantly. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Hearing none, let's hit the next one. So the projected tax rate includes the yield, which was reduced, and this was, you know, set out by the commissioner on the December 1st letter. Takes into account the loss of sales tax and what is needed to raise enough money to fill the ed fund. The threshold increased by $33, so very small increase there. And then I talked about the equalized pupils, but for this presentation, they're the same as last year's. And then the CLAs have not come out, and the CLAs could have a fairly large impact on the tax rate. As you know, the real estate market has been moving quite significantly.
Lori,
Yes.
the towns weren't doing any reappraisals this year, so will that make a difference?
You know, it could hold them steadier, but it's also, there is a piece of it that's figured in with the sales in the area. So it's really, you know, there have been a lot of sales, and from my understanding, and this is purely just, you know, hearing it out in the field, is that, you know, things are selling above market value. And when that happens, that drops your CLA. So it remains to be seen at this point. I'm not sure. They should be out, I would say, early January, before your next meeting, I would assume. All right, Joe, I'm ready, unless anybody has another question. All right, so based on all of that information, and again, able to look at the equalized pupils a little earlier than normal, that's giving you a unified tax rate of $2.21. That does include the 4-cent merger, so you're on, you know, this year of getting 4, and then you'll have 2, and then it goes away. So this is compared to $1.98 is where you ended up last year. So let's just look at the towns, because that's helpful for everybody to see their own town. So in doing this, I did not apply the 5% hold harmless to anybody at this point. Mainly because I think, you know, we have to get used to seeing these tax rates as though they are, right? Jamaica is at they don't have that 5% provision any longer. So they're at a real tax rate, and Brookline and Newfane and Townsend are actually not at a real tax rate yet because of the 5% hold harmless. So, you know, these numbers represent, you know, a 17% increase in Brookline, a 12% increase in Jamaica, a 17% increase in Newfane, and 13% in Townsend based on this. Now, again, I did find out a little bit more information later this afternoon, and, you know, Brookline, Newfane, and Townsend will qualify again this year for the 5% hold harmless. And so, you know, that would mean that their tax rates would basically go up to 5%. So, or go up 5%, where Jamaica would go up the full 12%. Okay. The magic number, Al, as we call it,
Yes.
is $2.05. So if you drop the budget, reduce the budget, sorry, to, you know, and get down to a $2.05 tax rate, and that includes the incentive, then Townsend would probably drop out. Okay, so that's sort of the level. However, if you're making major changes and you're getting down to a $2 tax rate, you know, that's better than $2.05. So it does get you closer for Brookline and Newfane that they cap out right now for this year at $1.98, I believe it is. Let me just double check that. Yeah, so they would cap out at $1.98. So anything below $1.98, and they would lose the provision as well.
Who was that would lose the provision at 198?
Yeah, $1.98.
No,
Now
I'm
this
sorry,
is,
who?
oh, I'm sorry,
Who would lose it at 198?
Brookline and Newfane.
Brookline, okay.
Mm-hmm. Now this, you know, this is very early in the process. You know, your yield goes up, that changes things. You know, there's lots of moving pieces at this point in time, but that's what I know today based on this document. Okay.
Gotcha. So I know that coming out of the budget committee meeting, we had kind of several things that we wanted to look at. And I know that Keegan had brought forth that we wanted to look at what would happen if we, you know, were to eliminate, basically get flat. But I've been thinking about it a lot, and I don't think we want to make programmatic changes. Doesn't really seem to make sense. So Lori, can you just tell me exactly how much we have in reserve? I think it's around 450-ish.
Yeah, it's unaudited at this point, but it's actually 572. So yeah, so definitely if the board wanted to apply some of that to bring down the tax rate, that is, you know, your options are there to do that. I would just also, I'm hesitant because of next year, and seeing those ADM numbers are pretty scary. And so, you know, if you use your fund balance or the majority of your fund balance to buy down your tax rate this year, what happens next year, right? So I think that we need to get back to that long-term planning look. And, you know, I did put together the chart that I had done at the end of our long-term planning, and I can send it over to you, Joe, and then, you know, maybe at some point we can just take a look at that to see where are you headed, right? Because I don't want to put you in a position where you're using all of your fund balance one year and then you can't react the next year. So just let me send this over to you, Joe.
Yeah, Lori, as he's doing that, I would would completely agree that we don't want to completely take away our reserve. That would be foolish. Build it up for a reason. But I'm just curious. So that 205 that we called the the magic number, that would kind of benefit all of the towns in our district, including Jamaica. Obviously, Jamaica would be the one that would be hit the worst by this, because the other towns are at the hold harmless at 5%. So in looking at the benefit for all of our towns, I'm just curious what we would need to do, how much reserve we would need in order to get to the 205.
Okay. Hang on one second. Okay, so I know you need 550,000 to get to a $2 tax rate, so a little less than that. Yeah, so you're probably somewhere in the range of about 475, basically, to get to 205.
Wow. Okay.
I have the document. Thanks, Larry.
So that would get us to 205. That would keep us in the hold harmless. And for Jamaica, that would represent what, maybe a 3%, 4% increase?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, 3.7.
3.7% increase.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So that is, a possibility that can happen. I don't know if Joe, you want to bring that document up just so we can look at, where we're headed.
Sure. Al, can you see hands?
No, I'm sorry, I can't. I apologize.
Okay. Mike Foley has his hand up.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. This is a question, I guess, not really for Lori, but I'm just wondering, she mentioned that we had a large amount of students we lost to homeschool. I don't want to necessarily assume it's due to COVID. There could be other reasons. So it might be worth the board taking some time to maybe survey those parents at some point, figure out why, because that's a lot of kids to lose. And we want to get as many back as we can. And maybe we even consider down the road some sort of, drive to get students back that we've lost. Kind of along the lines of what Bob has been talking about and everything else, right?
That's a great idea, Mike.
So this graph represent. Oh, I'm sorry, Al. I just started it. I'm on a roll.
No. Yeah, this is your presentation.
So this graph represents where we sort of ended up as a summary when we were doing the long-term planning. And so fiscal year 22, I think I had projected $2.27. So not too far off. But those projections all were with the equalized pupil holding steady at 512, right? So you can see that we're, still stepping up out to fiscal year 25. So between 22 and 23, I'm not sure what the equalized pupils will do. Now there's the weighting study that could happen, but that they aren't going to drop in all of those students in 1 year. That's basically it'll be a rolled out type of thing. So that might keep up with your normal increases every year for 3 years or something like that. So I wanted to remind everybody of where we were when we ended the discussion last time. And we weren't too far off from that 221, 227, 221, so.
Lori, can you just refresh my memory what the assumptions are in this? Obviously, so you held ADM at or equalized at 512. what were the other assumptions in terms of increase year over year?
Sure. Yeah, the regular negotiated increases for staff and for, I did actually put in an increase for special ed, although this year it was a decrease, so that's some of the difference you're seeing. And those are just the normal, like the normal 3% increases that happen, transportation, special ed, and then whatever number we use for negotiations or salary increases there as well. Healthcare, 12%, it's a little less this year, but it's less because of COVID. So I don't anticipate it, being 10% again next year. Could be, but. So those are all the factors that go into, just the normal every year increases based on the staff population.
Okay, so obviously where we start out with FY22 will play out throughout the years, and if we start at 227, then yeah, we'd be, looks like in a world of hurt in FY25. Yeah.
All right, so you can switch me back now, Joe. You're doing a masterful job, Joe.
Why, thank you. Get rid of this. Okay, you got it?
Yeah, you can go ahead to the next slide when you get to.
One more?
Nope, right there for a second. Let me just talk about, so the potential additions. So this is without the budget that represents that $2.21 tax rate is without all of these potential additions. So there are some administrator requests for programmatic changes and also the investments that need to be made into the buildings. So now you can go forward. So these were two programmatic asks. There were some other administrator asks, some of which, if it was, an insignificant amount and I could find savings somewhere else, I went ahead and put it into the budget. These two positions, increase in positions, were not put in the draft budget. First draft budget. So I believe I sent you the request forms for you to read about these. And, Al, I'm not sure if you want to have Bob jump in and talk about his. I don't know if Craig's on the call either. I know they did, or Bob did a great job explaining it to the budget committee. So up to you.
Laura, I think that's a great idea. I do see Bob. I'm looking for Craig, but yeah, Bob, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So one of the things you guys have been talking about is the reduction in kids numbers. And obviously that's what drives a lot of this budget work in our funding. So we have seen that at Leland and Gray this year. I mean, obviously we've had some kids go to the homeschool route. And I do think most of those, if not all, have been due to COVID. Including some kids from Wardsboro, which are tuition kids. So that has even though the ADM is held harmless for us, for our kids that go homeschool from within our district, the Wardsboro tuition kids, that does have an impact on us immediately because that's a lost revenue. So that's a factor just to put in the back of your head. But at any rate, we've also had a number of kids who were what I would refer to as on the bubble, kids who were identified as at-risk students prior to COVID. And COVID just became, just too much and too unbearable for them to complete. And so we've had some dropouts as well. And we've worked hard to try to counsel them in a different direction. But in the end, that's what they did. So what I'm proposing is basically two positions, a para and a professional position. And the idea is to create an in-house recoup of students who would normally drop out. So a lot of the students that drop out typically head down to Vermont Adult Learning, which is a state-funded program that operates regionally, and our locations in Brattleboro. And the way that program works, there's a couple of options, but kids can go down and earn a diploma through our school if they live in our district, or they can earn a GED if they do the appropriate testing for that. In either way, when that happens, they are not our students anymore, and we lose the count on them. So it's my suggestion that we work to create a small program that will bring those kids back into the fold and basically do what Vermont Adult Learning does: create a graduation plan, utilize the proficiencies, and have those kids earn the remainder of their high school credit in some kind of non-traditional sense. That might mean that they come to work part days and work. It might mean that they that they do their work remotely from home and check in regularly with the teacher. It might mean that they're with us all day long. It really doesn't matter. Either way, they'd be are considered a full-time student with us while they worked on these diploma requirements. So the estimated cost of a full professional person who would be licensed, presumably in one of the core areas, and a support staff member like a tutor who could help out as well, is estimated about $128,000, which includes salary and benefits. And Lori, at the budget committee meeting, we asked how many kids would it take to re-enroll in this program to have it be cost neutral. And I think if I remember correctly, you said 4-ish.
Yeah, right around there. Mm-hmm.
So if we've had, let's say, 5 to 8 kids drop out, if we get 4 of them back, this program pays for itself. If we get more back, then obviously it helps the bottom line overall by having those students back into your ADM count. So for me, the moral imperative isn't really about the money, although I know that's important to you guys too. The moral imperative is that we're going to have a bunch of kids in our community who are going to have a much higher cost to our community if they don't have high school diplomas at a minimum. So I think that we can bring those kids back into the fold. One of the advantages of Leland and Gray, as you guys all know, is our small size and the community nature of it. I think we can drive out to the kids' homes, we can talk them through it, and that we can get them to commit to coming back in and doing this program. One question I received in the committee was whether or not this was a permanent situation or whether this was a temporary thing. And my answer at the time, I still stand by it, is I don't know. I think it's probably a couple of year thing, probably. These kids aren't going to necessarily get their diploma in 1 year. Some of them are a little further away than that. And some of them, if they're working, are going to have other concerns to deal with. But I don't see it as a permanent thing necessarily. I think Vermont Adult Learning program is one that we could work with to get them to be more interactive with our kids. But right now, the geography of getting kids to them is just really, really hard. And so if we can sort of recreate the wheel at Leland and Gray, I think it will be beneficial for us financially as well as for those kids and families, and as a result for the whole community. So that's my pitch.
Thanks, Bob. Joe, can you just tell me if there are any questions?
I was just going to say, Keith has a hand and Ken has a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, once again, I'm very impressed with this program ask. It's wonderful for the kids of our community. It's wonderful for our citizenry as a state. I am fully in favor of finding a way to support the kids and meeting them where they're at and then helping them to move forward. During the budget committee meeting, Lori, I've got a question for you. You had indicated that the cost, because this would be a new program, could be covered under grant funding. I was curious if you had heard anything new around available grants that we might be able to tap into that wouldn't necessarily put this burden of like the financial piece of it onto the backs of the taxpayers if there was other funding available. Were you aware of any update on that?
At this point, no. I mean, I think the stimulus package just is passing or due to pass. And I do know that there will be money coming down through what I believe will come down through Title I. Mm-hmm. So it could potentially be funded with that. But I think that if it's something that the committee, the board really feels strongly about in funding this position, then it should go in the local budget. We could get down to the wire and we could find out about some grant money and pull it out, that type of thing, or pull part of it out. But, I'm always looking for grants to fund things. It's my background and I think it works a lot of times, but It's really where the board, if the board is really committed to this particular program, then I think it should probably go into the local budget for now until we know more.
Thank you.
Was it Ken next, Joe? Yes, Santa Claus.
Ken, then Lindsay, then Mike.
Thank you.
My question's for Bob. Is this just Bob's brainstorm or his staff, or has he had anybody coming looking for an adult learning situation?
Well, Ken, first lesson in administration is surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. So I will not take credit for this idea. Definitely a team effort. We have students who regularly drop out and tell us they're going to interact with Vermont Adult Learning. And we're under obligation as the school district. The way that it works is that they meet with the kid, we send them a transcript of where the kid's at, and then they send us a proposed plan, and we negotiate with Vermont Adult Learning to develop the graduation plan for the kid. And then of course we give them the diploma when they're done. And we have the ability to measure the outcomes as well to make sure that they're holding true to the plan and so on and so forth. We have a level of supervision over it. I tell you that to tell you this, that we are already pretty involved with the plans that get developed there. So for us to do our own isn't really a huge step. And the kids that say they're going to go there, very few are successful there. I think, so this is my 5th year. Well, I've been through 4 graduations at Leland and Gray, and I think I've had 1 kid who has successfully completed that program. My experience at Springfield, my 7 years there was similar, more completed there, but of course, geographically, the office was in Springfield. So it was a much more accessible place for kids in that community versus here, Brattleboro is just too far away for some of these kids, particularly if they haven't earned their driver's license yet, if they don't have access to cars. We're talking typically about underprivileged families. I don't know if that answers all of your questions or not, but.
Well, because I'm curious, because if we're talking about former students and they leave Leland and Gray, why would they want to go back to Leland and Gray? I mean, it could be an atmosphere thing. It could, there's like
Sure.
too many. There could be, hey, I don't like Bob Tebow.
Most people don't, Ken, and that's okay.
That's not true. That's not true.
So I think the difference, Ken, is that we offer them through this program an alternative track. So it's not like, hey, I have to go sit through an English block, a chemistry block, do my phys ed requirements. I have an alternative track to earn my proficiencies and to demonstrate those things in different ways, much like the kids do who go through the Vermont Adult Learning Program. So we're not sentencing them to the same kind of an environment that they would have if that was the reason. But often it's more about economics. Often it's about the kid just doesn't see that their earning power is going to be significantly different. Or they work part-time at Stratton, or they go somewhere else and then the hours get in the way and they can't really concentrate. And then, one thing happens, the next thing happens, next thing you know, they're just like, yeah, it's not really worth it for me to come to school anymore. They don't see the value. So, sometimes if that's the reason they drop out, then, we can work with them. And other times kids drop out, and I'm sure you know this, but kids drop out because sometimes they're not challenged enough. And they don't find the methods that a traditional school uses as being, in their alleyway. They have multiple intelligences that are tracked and measured differently. So this can offer something to those kids as well. So I'm not saying it's a silver bullet that we're going to get every single kid to come back and get a diploma, but I do think we can at least get 4, and that's break even. So it seems worth trying in my mind.
I'm going to hold you to it, Bob. 4.
All right. You'll pass me a budget first, Ken.
Yeah, well, we're working on that. Thanks,
you, Ken.
Thank you.
Who was next, Joe?
Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Thanks. Lindsay, then Mike, then Dana, then Keegan for round 2.
All right.
My question has to do with, is there any possibility of students from other schools utilizing this in a tuition basis, or is it strictly Leland and Gray, people who are leaving or potentially leaving? Is there any additional incomes, I guess, potential?
I would guess probably not. And the reason would be that if they live in a different district, that those districts are probably not going to be willing to pay tuition to a public high school that they can access for free through school choice. So because we have a statewide high school choice option, any kid from anywhere in the state can come to Leland and Gray for free.
Right.
And so, why would a district pay tuition to have them access that program? But there may be other ways to leverage it that I haven't really thought about yet. But my focus wasn't really on the financial side, as you probably can guess. It was really more on the academic side. But plus, they can go to Val for free. I mean, if they can get to Brattleboro, or if it's a Bells Falls kid, if they can get to Springfield, then you've taken away that need to get to Townsend.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, so I really like this idea, but I am concerned about the costs. I do think that Bob's right that he can probably get 4. I'm wondering if we can kind of task Bob with putting some feelers out, like if the board did this, have some of those initial conversations so that we're not going into it blind for $128,000.
I mean, I can certainly do that. I think the one thing I'll say about that is it's tough to get a kid in January, let's say, to commit to what they're going to do
Understandable.
in August or September.
I mean, just to get some type of interest gauge,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly get some informal information.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have signed commitment letters if that's.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Yeah, but I can do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Dana.
I'm sorry, just to follow up. When do you want something like that by the January meeting to see if I can get by then? Is that what you're looking for?
Well, I mean, as we're going through this budget process, it would be helpful to have. So yeah,
Just some regular feedback on where I'm at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
All right, go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, Bob, I was wondering, would this be offered to, say, somebody who was like 19 or 20 who made a bad decision at some point and decided that maybe they wanted to get their GED or equivalent or try to get their diploma and somehow could figure a way to pay for it?
Yeah, well, so so think of it this way: if they live in the district, they wouldn't have to pay for it. That's the idea. That's part of the free the programming, that any student of any age is entitled to access to earn the diploma if they've yet to earn one. We don't have an age cutoff of what you're allowed to, how old you're allowed to be to enter Leland and Gray. However, because we've added 6th grade a few years back, I would be hesitant about taking kids over a certain age until I knew that it was an appropriate match. Certain kids you might, or I wouldn't say kids, adults, you might pressure them to go and access the Brattleboro situation if their age was going to be one that was going to be a challenge to having 6th graders in the building. Now, on the other hand, if they're doing a lot of their work remotely and they're accessing stuff through that way and they're just coming in once a week or something to check in, that might be different. So I think it depends on who we get. But the way we were approaching it from the school standpoint was really thinking about kids who had dropped out this year. So kids who are already Leland and Gray age, if you will. But I mean, in theory, I guess we could open it up to more if they were willing, as long as it was an appropriate match.
It's a start.
Yeah, but it wouldn't cost them anything if they're a resident of the communities.
Thanks, Dana. Keegan? Oh, I'm sorry. Lori, did you have a point?
No, I just wanted, and Bob may know this, or maybe Bill, because I don't know the answer to this. Could you count the ADM if they were over 18?
I'm going to defer to Bill on that one.
His internet is really spotty, so.
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, well.
I would think a student's a student.
I mean, we end up sometimes with a 5th year kid who could be 19, and those kids would count, correct?
Yeah.
So
okay.
Maybe there's a cutoff somewhere, but logic would say that they probably would.
I went to school with one who was there 5-6 years. So it happens.
Sorry, Keegan, go ahead.
No worries. I was actually curious to see, could this program be implemented as part of the flexible pathways work that you're already doing? Do you have staffing that would be available to support that Act 77 work that you've already done? And instead of, or in addition to offering the dual enrollment, the senior survival, the duo, and independent study, and so forth, could you also create the space or have like the flexible enough schedule for the kids where we wouldn't need to create a whole new program? We could just leverage the work that's already being done on campus through flexible pathways.
No,
Or-
great question. Great question, Keegan. And our Flexible Pathways coordinator, Terry, already does all those things you described, plus the work-based learning program. Her plate is pretty full with that. However, one of the things she does do is already work with VAL on getting those plans approved. So it's already on her plate. So I can see her being involved with that, maybe from more of the administrative end to help coordinate the flow of paperwork, which is something she already does with Vermont Adult Learning. I don't think she would have the space right now to be able to take on more. And she's not a licensed teacher, so the ability to do like the teaching part and have some credits attached to it would not be doable either in that regard. But I like your thinking. The question was asked, I think, at the committee meeting is, could we piece together people internally to build this team to do this in a way that wouldn't add extra staff? And my answer that night was that without taking away other offerings to kids, other programmatic things, electives, APs, or what have you, that would be incredibly hard to do. And that's why I was looking for the additional staff to pull that off.
Thanks.
You have Ken now.
Ken. Go ahead.
Quick question. Do we need a motion to task the administration with finding an age for a cutoff that would be included in our ADM?
I don't think we need to make a motion.
Can we just be friendly about it?
So what do we want to direct the administration to do to find if there's an age cap?
Age cutoff for counting a student as part of the ADM in an adult learning situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
Let's do that. And I'm sure they can probably have the information by our budget committee meeting. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Joe, do we have anybody else?
Nope, you're good to go.
All right. Bob, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it.
And do you see Craig? How are you, Craig?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here and to stand up. Yeah, so, my ask for this is, really future planning. And one of the things that I've sort of, sorry, hold on. Towns is doing a really great job, right? Academically, I pride myself in structuring the academics to build just growth for every kid. And that comes with high levels of differentiation. And our AST program has been doing a nice job with Jen, and over the last couple of years, we're building. And so right now, currently, we have 1.6 full-time AST teachers at our school, and the additional 0.4 would get us to 2 full-time staff. And the plan would be to have each one cover the umbrella of 3 grade levels, and just continue their work there. And I look at like the money that we have going on there, so it's $40,000. But what's been going on, as Lori has already commented earlier, is that special ed is going down, and part of that is because the academic support that we're actually giving and the program that Jen has built is actually keeping kids out of special ed because we're really targeting their instruction. And so this is just a look to the future to try to plan to get 2 full-time employees and just keep going with where we're going. And it was just an ask for long-term planning. Pretty simple.
Thanks, Craig. So it certainly sounds like there's an offset component to it then. By spending this, we're actually able to reduce our special education budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can sort of see it coming. And again, it just happened with our special ed costs. So if we just continue on, again, the program's in place, let's sort of invest in our kids and let's put a little bit more to this 0.6 employee to get 2 full-time. And we'll just continue to roll on. It'll definitely be an offset.
Great. Thank you. Joe, are there any questions? I'm in the dark here. I'm sorry?
Yes, Lindsay had her hand up.
Lindsay, sorry, go ahead.
My question is just, I'm curious how the student-teacher ratio for AST compares at Townsend versus Jamaica and Newbrook. Is your ratio matching, or higher, lower? Where do you stand right now?
That's a good question. So what we do with these specialists is that we sort of prorate them for the amount of students that we have. So more of the AST within the district from central office is sort of distributed to where the need is. And again, yeah, Lindsay, I think it's a good question because I'm looking to get a little bit more. So asking for it locally, and Lori can speak more specifically about how it's funded right now. I think there might be a little bit of a grant associated with it, but to really increase that spending.
Mike Foley has his hand up.
Mike, go ahead.
Sure. I'm just wondering, given the budget position we're in, and we're talking about maybe needing to trim, if this is something that if we're talking about it for future planning, I mean, by all means, I want the schools to have what they need. But if we don't need it now and we're going to have less kids, I'm just wondering if this one we might want to put on the table for a while till we see how the broader budget shapes up.
For sure. This is not an ideal time to ask for an increase of 0.4. It's, considering all the decisions that we're going to have to make, and those are going to be really tricky decisions. So to add more to it's really tough. This is sort of like the first step in building it for the future. And maybe, 4 or 5 years down the line, those AST positions come away from the central office and then become locally funded at Townsend or Jamaica or Newbrook or the high school. So this is just kind of like the toe in the water and see if we can get that done. But Mike, I totally agree with you. It's really hard.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Mike.
Al, you have Ken, and then Dana, and then Lindsay.
Ken, Dana, Lindsay. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay. Well, if the academic support positions are filtered through through central office on a need basis, if we needed more support in Townsend or Newbrook or anywhere else, it would be up to the central office to request another part-time position for the whole district, not just for one school. Am I correct on that?
That's my belief, but I'm also looking at Lori in the corner.
Yeah, so some of the AST is grant funded and some of it is locally funded. So West River as a whole is locally funding 1.6 FTE of AST currently. That's combined with also some grant funded FTEs as well. So Ken, I understand what you're saying, that your question is, wouldn't it be up to Wyndham Central to request this, but it has to flow through to the local budget. So it really is a request of, Craig put the request out there. Jen reviewed it. Jen, of course, would love more staff to, reach the goals of the of the student needs. So it has to flow through to the local budget.
Right. But what I'm saying is that when we hire somebody, we don't hire them just to go to Townsend. We hire them where they're needed, not if they're going to be needed in the future.
You are correct. They would be part of the AST team and potentially deployed to Townsend because of the needs.
are the needs there now that we need them? Because I heard something about future planning.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can answer. I mean, we're doing really well, Ken, and again, the ASD program that Jen has built has been really successful. We're making a lot of educational gains. We're kind of spread really thin with the numbers that we have and the numbers that we're projecting. And for the kids that we can reach, K to 5, having an additional, 2 days would be fantastic. And so, again, I'm just looking down the road as like the locally sourced, funded, just try to get more people in the building to give the kids what we need. We're going to see impacts of COVID and our long remote break for a long time. So we kind of need more people on the ground, and this was just one way to ask for it.
Okay, one more quick question on this. Actually, it's a 2-part question. One is, do you have an increase, I believe, or a decrease in students this coming year?
Sure. Yeah, we're going to have about an increase of about 14 as projected.
As 14. Okay.
Yeah.
And with that, when you say you have an increase of 14 students, how many of those are pre-K? What's the difference between, I'm talking about from kindergarten up, because pre-K is the whole district anyway.
Right. So our total, you're right. Total enrollment is going to go up by 14, but the amount of people that we're passing on up is 13. So we're relatively going to stay pretty level. So our oldest pre-K program has 13. We're expecting to get a few more in from the younger group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then basically what we're saying is that you're in your grade levels, because isn't pre-K early ed?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So early ed takes care of that. So you don't have so then what you're telling me is you don't have an increase in K through 5. It's about the same, but you're still asking for a 0.4 to increase staff.
Yeah, I think you're accurate in looking at it like that. If we're going to pass 13 up and we're going to have an increase of 14, the general population between K to 5 is going to stay relatively the same, and will probably increase by 7 or 8 just from people we're going to get back. Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, that's my information.
All right, we got Dana and then Lindsay. Anybody else, Joe, after that?
Hey, I'll pass on to Lindsay. Ken asked what I was.
Oh, okay.
So.
Thanks, Dana. Joe, is there anybody after Lindsay?
No, not yet.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Lindsay.
So Ken actually did get into part of what I was going to ask. I guess the only thing that I would still have to say about it is that I always want this position to be a thing. But I think everybody probably wants this in every school. And boy, it's hard for me personally to say that I don't feel like now is the time, but unfortunately I don't feel like now is the time.
Again, everything that people are saying in the comments and the questions, like totally right. And Lindsay was right again in saying that, it's a really important position, and we hope to never see it go away, and we hope to never see a decrease in the ASD program that we have, whether that's because grants run out or we're starting to ask locally and it's not going through the budget. But, it's just an ask. It's a tough time. We realize that. And, I will do and plan around whatever you guys allow me to do.
Thanks, Craig. Thank you for bringing that forward. All right, if we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and move on with Lori's presentation.
All right, now we get into some building needs. All right, so I'm not going to go through every single one, but the basis of where this information came from was the capital needs assessment that was done a couple of years ago now. So there are things from 2019, 2020, and 2021 that are on these sheets that have not been done. So we could just, I'm sure you all looked at them and studied them and understand what all needs to be upgraded. So we can go ahead and flip through some of these things. And while you're flipping through, what's that?
Flip through them pretty quickly or stop on any?
Yeah, no, you can flip through them pretty quickly. When we get to the end, we'll have a big number that needs to be looked at.
There's your big number.
So there's the big number. 160 of it, 68 of it is the programmatic ask. So that's not, you can just basically say $1 million of past and current deferred maintenance on the buildings that is needed. The budget committee asked me to look into bonds. And also I had Chris Medina look ahead to fiscal year, I think it was 24 or 25, and put together, what else is coming up that needs to be done. And so it was roughly around $2 million that, from 2019 to 2024, we'll say, are the needs based on the capital needs assessment. So I did talk to the bond bank, and it's tricky when you're using money to do deferred maintenance and repairs that should be done on a yearly basis, really, or you should be putting money away for, some of the things won't last as long as the loan is for. And so they're not going to fund those things, right? So that's the key is, the HVAC systems will last the 10 years of the loan. The roof might last the 10 years of the loan. So Chris was going to go back through and look at what has the shelf life basically of a 10-year bond. And I will say that 10-year bonds are very, very cheap right now, less than 1%. So basically 200 grand, $10,000 per year is what you would need to pay every year for 10 years to get this all taken care of. Through, again, it's not going to go the full 10 years of what needs to be done, but that just gives you a starting point to start the conversation.
Is 10 years the max?
No, you could, but again, you're running into that,
lifetime or the shelf life of the items that you choose. Exactly.
The locker rooms, I think on Leland and Gray, it's like $33,000 for the locker room. That they're not going to fund something like that. You should be.
Well, that locker room's lasted about 50 years.
They do, apparently. Should they last, or will it end?
Bob knows.
So, go ahead. Sorry.
Let's say, but apparently we should have been upgrading them all along.
So,
50.
So I think that to dig into this, we would need some more information from the engineers, and we would need some more information from the bond bank to move forward with doing something like this. But the large ticket items probably could be done through a bond.
When you said that Chris looked at the shelf life of the items, did the $2 million include everything that was potentially part of that package? That would be 10 years?
No, he hasn't come up with that yet. He hasn't. He just pulled together everything that the capital needs assessment had on the list from 2019 to 2024, I think it was. So some of those items, like I pointed out, of the locker room upgrades. Those are not, something that would be funded through this.
Sorry,
So
Bob.
he hasn't pulled those out yet.
Gotcha. Okay, so 2 million max, and then it could be somewhere, well, will be somewhere lower than that.
Right.
Wait.
Or we could go out further, so it's just a starting point to help you understand in the context of, the conversation with the engineer about the longevity of Leland and Gray. So it gives you a starting point of how much do you want to invest in the buildings.
Gotcha. Okay. And certainly rates are never going to get any better than this.
No. Nope. All right, let's move along.
Lori, I had one question.
Sorry.
You have Keegan, Mike, and Dana in that order.
I'll go first. So I think that this really highlights, like this part of our conversation highlights the importance of not deferring maintenance year over year over year, because then we do like, are we saving costs and not cutting programs? Of course. But then we are also leaving ourselves with $1 million repair bill and a projected $2 million repair bill to carry us through, 5 additional years. I would be curious, just looking at what needs to be done, would it be possible, like I'm looking at like a new oil furnace, a lot of the things needed over at Leland and Gray, looking at Townsend Elementary, looking at the requests for Newbrook. Jamaica doesn't seem to be asking for a lot, but Jamaica, the building, is also relatively small and under occupied. So the numbers make sense to me. Would it be possible to really pursue this through a $1 million bond, just to like fix what we know needs to be fixed and maybe not project too far into the future, but just be a little bit more responsible as a decision-making board when it comes to looking at budgets or looking at finding ways to maintain maintenance and upkeep? Like, is looking at just this $1 million repair bill an option, or does everything need to be reviewed as like, oh, well, the gravel driveway won't last 10 years, so that wouldn't be covered?
It's a good thought, Keegan, a good question. I'd be curious to see what Chris comes up with it for a whole list.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if he could come up with that before our next budget committee meeting, I think that would be very helpful in decision making. And then perhaps by our next full meeting, we would be able to decide, what's the range, and then Lori will have obviously more information from the bond bank. So we'd probably be able to make a more informed decision. Is that a good enough time frame, Lori, for our next full board meeting?
Yeah, I think it'll depend on Chris's timeline of being able to get it done. I think he does need to have some conversations with the engineers around it. I think if I understand what you're saying, Keegan, is you're looking at the big ticket items would last 10 years of a loan, getting those done now with $1 million bond. Okay, that's what I thought. Right.
And then my follow-up question, and this is kind of coming at it from the communication lens. As I recall, and I might be misremembering from our conversation from the board budget meeting, or the budget committee meeting, I'm so sorry. The townspeople would be voting to accept a bond. Like, the bond is not a guarantee, like, we're going to do this, we're taking on this expense. That would be another line item on the ballot that we would put forth to the communities in March.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question, Keegan. And Laura, can you speak to how it would look on the budget, or how it would flow through in the budget, I guess would be best.
Sure. We would just put, if it's $1 million, then it's basically 100,000 and plus a little bit of interest. We would put it into this budget and the next 10 budget cycles.
Great, thank you. And then we've got Mike and then Dana.
So Al touched on a little bit of it. What I was going to say, I already know the answer, but for any public who's watching this meeting, how does that affect our, cost per pupil going forward? Like, what's the advantage of a bond versus just doing it in the budget?
Oh, sure. You're talking about the exclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be, it's with $1 million bond, it's not going to affect you that dramatically. Basically you're taking that $100,000 payment and dividing it by the 512. And so that's part of the per pupil exclusion you could take off. So not a lot of money.
Right. But it doesn't add to the penalty or anything like that, right? Doesn't it offset from the penalty, if I'm understanding correctly?
Right. So your total expenses increase with the $100,000 in there, but then
Yeah.
But then some of it comes off with the exclusion. But again, not a lot of money.
And then if you just find us an extra $572K budget surplus every year, we don't need to do any of this. Just kidding. All right, I'm done.
To find it, Mike. You're right. Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, I hate to add more work to Chris's thing, but can he prioritize for each of these buildings what definitely needs to go first? I know life safety and heating and HVAC need to come first, but if he could prioritize all these critical needs, it would help, I think, a little bit more for us in making decision. Am I off track, guys? I don't know.
No, Dana, I think that makes sense to prioritize, but maybe something that gets flushed out with the 10-year shelf life. Good call. Joe, any other questions?
You've still got Ken.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ken. Go ahead.
That's okay. What the board needs to think about, and what Chris needs to think about, is I noticed at least on 2 different buildings, as we quickly went through the list, I saw sinks for at least two different buildings. Now, I don't know if that's replacing all the sinks in the building, half the sinks in the building. Can you guys hear me?
I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because my screen's frozen.
Oh.
Well, with the sinks, if you're going to be doing a big number of sinks in one building, first thing you need to do is you need to stagger those so that you only do so many sinks a year. Reason being, because otherwise, at the life expectancy of all the sinks, you're going to have one big bill again. So that's something you need to stagger. You can't just do all the sinks in a building and then 10 years down the line, you got to put all new sinks in again. You see what I mean? You need to stagger that. And as far as LNG, I believe that was one of them that had sinks on it. We only need to do 2/3 of the sinks in there because we had such a decrease in enrollment that we only need to use 2/3 of the sinks.
Okay,
Ken. Well, don't forget, I said go ahead and put the money in. Keegan, I seconded Keegan's motion at the last meeting to get those holes drilled and air out our studs, our
The support columns.
support columns there, so we can get at least 15 years out of the building. Okay, we still don't know if that's going to work yet or not. So don't be putting in a whole bunch of stuff, because if we know that we just increased the life expectancy up to 15 years, let's not put something in there that's going to, is going to be a 50-year item that we don't have. Okay.
Good point.
And so we should really go through those lists one more time with Chris and Chris would be the main man. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. All right, anybody else?
Just
If
kidding
not,
about the decreased population thing, Bob. Okay, you can have more than 2/3 of your sinks, especially now with COVID. You got to do a lot of hand washing.
Indeed.
Needing more sinks. Bring me more sinks.
There are no more hands out.
All right, great.
All right.
Section 3, Lori.
Okay, well, before, just to clarify, to back up, so some of those things like sinks would not go into a bond, right? So it would need to go into the maintenance portion of the budget. So that's where we need to tear apart all of these things and say what really needs to go into the yearly budget, and what needs to be, you know, a big ticket item that's going to last 10 years. So that's the work that needs to be done. And then to Dana's point, to prioritize those bigger ticket items. All right. Is this the last part of the budget? No, this is this. Okay. Building statistics. So this is just basically, I thought the board would find it interesting to see how many students were in the buildings and what grades. I was able to get a staff student count that actually relates to how the state pulls the information and reports out. So it will give us in the future, it will give us more comparable data. So that's why I have that little note about the following slide. But this still gives you some idea of the staffing in the buildings, in the elementary buildings. So again, I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on this. If anybody has any questions through this section. It also, just to clarify, the personnel and building costs refers to just the staff that actually is in the building, that is assigned to the building. It does not include special ed staff. It only includes, or AST staff, it only includes the teachers and staff members of the building and the building costs. So this is the data that I was able to get from the AOE, and it actually, so what I did is I combined it as though West River were combined all the schools were combined all the way back to 2011-12. So you can see that these are student counts. These are ADM numbers, not equalized pupil. So you can see, you know, as we all know, as is happening in most schools in Vermont, that the student counts are going down. The 1920 year is our COVID year, right? So that's where we can see where the number dropped a little bit there. This does not include pre-K also, just as a point of reference as well. So the year over year, 22% student drop, and the certified staff has increased by 7% in that same time frame. So it just gives you a real look over time of what's happening. And then that bottom grid is, just before the graph, is the ratios in each building. Does anybody have any questions on this graph?
I do.
I'll make it quick. And if this is not the appropriate time to ask the question, I can save it for when we meet in January. Based on the student ratios, as we look at Townsend and Jamaica and Newbrook at the elementary level, I noticed that Jamaica's, student population is significantly smaller than the others. And I also recently read over the school choice policy within the inter-district piece. And I'm curious if that has been the driving factor behind the declining enrollment in Jamaica, like specifically are Jamaica children opting to go to Townsend or opting to go to Newbrook, or does Jamaica just not have elementary aged kids beyond the 22 that are in the building?
Keegan, great question, and I'm sure somebody else can jump in to answer, but I know that probably 3 years ago, we were at 65 students at Jamaica. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And now we are down to 22. Is that
55
55? Sorry.
before you merged.
So 55 before we merged. Now we have 22.
17 opted out to go. They took school choice all in 1 year. So they transferred down to Townsend. So
that policy has had an impact on the population numbers and student ratios, specifically impacting the community of Jamaica and Jamaica Village School.
Yeah, correct.
Then I will move the rest of my questions to our January discussion about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Keegan. Joe, who did we have after that? Anybody? Or
I'm sorry, I lost my hand here.
oh, sorry, Ken. Gotcha.
Just a quick thing for Lori. Just out of curiosity, we have the number of certified staff in the building. We have the number of students in the building, in all our buildings. What at the administration level, how are we looking as compared to 10 years ago?
I can pull those numbers. I pulled these numbers because of the charts that were previous, right? So we were looking at, the staff in the buildings. And so that's why I pulled the charts this way. I can look at the full student staff ratios. They're going to be a lot less than these as you add more staff in. So I can look at all that if you would like me to.
Well, I'm just curious if because that's also an impact, because we're talking about teachers, right? Is this what we're talking about on that line down there? That's just the teachers.
These are certified staff. Yeah, this is one. This is the staff student ratio or data collection that the state pulls. This is from that. So it makes the data comparable to other districts in the state as we're looking. So that's why I pulled the information this way.
Okay, I'm just curious. I mean, on a total administration level, as all the administrators in the district compared to students, what the decline's been in the I don't know, maybe this would have to be done at a whole SU level. Maybe it's something for the whole SU to look at. But I'm just curious to see what those numbers would be.
Okay.
All right, that was my question. Because it's not going to impact this budget anyway.
Keegan, did I see your hand go up again?
You have Craig and then Keegan now.
Oh, Craig. Sorry. Go, Craig.
Sorry, I just want to chime in really quickly to talk about Keegan's point and Dana's point. Is that year that Jamaica lost 16 or 17, whatever Dana said, was also the year that we also decided to move the 6th grade to Leland and Gray. So it wasn't all just school choice. I think we actually gathered like 7 or 8. So I just wanted to put that out there too, that it wasn't just the school choice.
Thanks, Craig. Go ahead, Keegan.
I just wanted to clarify a question with Lori. When you're speaking about the certified staff number, that includes teachers and administrators, right? Like any certified position, right? Or
Nope.
Is it strictly just classroom teachers?
So I put the categories right on the chart here. So these are the categories of teachers that are included in these counts. This is straight off of the AOE's data collection.
Okay, my mistake, my screen's really small and
No, that's okay.
my copy that I printed out does not include this graph, so I apologize.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
Great. All right, if there's no other questions, are we moving on to regional comparisons, or is that just part of the
So that is the next slide that sort of looks at, what other schools in the region are. Now, the data only goes to up to 2019, so I'm not able to, go out any further, but I just wanted to provide some comparisons for you as far as, different schools that are similar in size. As compared to our schools in the sizes. So just information to, help you make better decisions or inform your decisions.
Thanks, Larry.
Lori,
You have one hand, it's Keegan.
thank you. I appreciate the comparison based on other schools within our district. I think the follow-up information that I would want to see, because while the numbers may be fairly close, our position within our budget and within all of the expenses that we're looking at and our deferred maintenance now catching up to us, I don't think financially we're in the same position where we can sustain the same type of model that these other districts do. Do you know more about where they stand with their, how close, like, are they over their equalized per student threshold number? Are they facing the same type of property tax implications that we as a community are? Or is this strictly looking at classroom sizes and adult student ratios?
So this particular is just looking at those. But again, I will, tell you, as I did, mentioned during the budget committee meetings, is that, there's only about 9 districts. I don't remember the exact number. It was 7. I think it might be 9 now, districts that are over the threshold in the state of Vermont. So, for instance, I don't believe, Guilford is. Twin Valley, I believe, might be. And I'm not sure about Green Mountain, but those are good questions. What are they doing? Exactly.
Great. All right. So where next, Lori?
You can just go by here. I just included this for ease of getting to those class size policies and procedures. And then I think we're just into the budget now. So this is the draft budget. I think that I'm not sure if it's really feasible to go through each line item, but I'm hoping everybody's had a chance to review it. And if you have questions, it'd be great to answer those questions by, line item.
Yeah, if you had a question and gave me the line, I could zoom to that page.
Right. So this is what you're looking at here is revenue. So you can see on line, I can't find it here. On line 24, you will see the reduction of the tuition, which is, the bulk of the 300,000.
And Lori, that's just best projection, right? 33.
It's best projection based on
Current.
the sending towns and the information I'm getting from them. So, Wardsboro is the biggest sending town. Marlboro and Dover don't have any students coming in, or they're not projecting any students coming in, I should say. And then there's Athens and Grafton that also send 7th and 8th graders that are tuitioned. We're not hearing about maybe 3 coming in, where that number has been sometimes 8. But it's hard to, it is hard right now to get answers like Bob was saying out of anybody. Nobody really knows what they're doing in the future.
But that's smart anyway. It sounds like a safer place to be in terms of revenue. And I would just say kudos and compliments to, getting it to a 1.46% increase in expenses. That's amazing. Ken, I'm sorry, it's not COLA. All right, it's close. What's
Only
COLA,
about
1.3?
$20K off from COLA, which does not help your tax rate much.
But still, if it's only 28K, bring it down 28K. Meet the number. Make the challenge.
Ken's challenge.
Dana has his hand up, Al.
Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, Lori, how did we do on the food service part? Did we get everybody to sign up?
Well, we did really well at getting all of the, applications in. That was really great. We did a great job. However, that is something that I need to talk to you all about because it's really, the revenues are still falling short, and we've lost some revenues with, Wardsboro is now doing their food with Dover as part of River Valley, so that was a loss of revenue. And also, I don't know if you guys remember, but the Stratton Foundation invested the first year of the food program, and so that money is also gone now. So unless there are some changes to how the food program runs, I'm going to actually have to increase the amount of money in the general fund that goes to cover the food program. But we did really well on applications, so we're hoping that does help us. That helps us not just in the food program, but getting in those applications and getting that number, that free and reduced number up, helps us in grant funding tremendously and other funds. So the administration did a great job at getting the word out, and thank you for all of you for doing the same.
Great. Thanks, Dana. Good question. Anybody else, Joe?
No hands. Oh, Mike.
Just
Go ahead,
real
Mike.
quick, look, Lori, is there any chance that we can reapply to Stratton Foundation, or did they make it clear the first time that it was like a one-time deal?
It was basically a pilot program. They were investing in a pilot program. They do help all of the districts in other ways. So, knowing that we already, got infused with this money, I don't really want to ask them again at this point.
Okay.
So we can flip to expenses, and I don't know if anybody has any questions on the expenses. I tried to put notes in there.
The notes are great, Lori. Very helpful.
Do we know of any teachers that are planning to retire that we're not planning to hire a replacement for? Is that data available yet, or is it too soon to kind of knock on that door?
I guess I'll defer to Bill on that one.
We have not been informed of any pending retirement as of today.
All right. Any other questions? No. All right. Well, hearing none.
And no hands.
And no hands. Lori, great presentation. Really appreciate it. And also board, great questions. Very helpful insight. I think at this point, we probably just have to coalesce some of our thoughts into what do we want to do next? Where do we want to look? Do we want to present any targets to send back to the budget committee? So anybody have some, I'll tell you what my initial thoughts are. So certainly love the idea of bonding something, $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is for deferred maintenance. Keegan, I think you said it very well. This is just the result of an accumulation of kicking it down the road for year after year. And, maybe at the time felt like the right decision when we saved a penny on our property taxes instead of fixing something that needed to be fixed for 20 years. But now's the time, I think makes sense as a board to start to address these things. Ken, you pointed out and talked about how long do we have with Leland and Gray, right? So can we stretch it from 10 years to 15 years, 15 years to 20 years? All things that would be really important in taking on that. And I know, Laura, you're going to do some more work on the bond and prioritizing, as Dana mentioned, and getting us the information for the next meeting, which will be great. That would be one. So, that could be another 100,000-ish on top of the budget, which I know we don't want to talk about when we're staring that kind of a property tax in the face like that. But I think we also have the reserve, which is a possible thing that we could tap into and doesn't involve hurting ourselves programmatically, which I think is key at this point, right? We're coming out of COVID. Kids are going to be going back to a physical school. Doesn't seem like it, but at some point soon, they will be going back. And as Craig has alluded to and others, these children will have many more challenges, social, emotional, than normal. It'll be all hands on deck. So those are some of my initial thoughts on kind of the direction that we need to head. But I think we should look to the reserve to some degree. Laura, maybe you can give us a scale of what does 205 mean? What does 208 mean? Just some kind of scale. X number of dollars adds a penny to property tax, et cetera. Just so somewhere we can get comfortable. Anyway, so those are my initial thoughts. I don't know if anybody else has any for direction for the budget committee in the next meeting. Go ahead, Keegan.
Al, I agree. I think if we're able to find a way to cover the cost of the capital needs through a bond, I think that is a really great idea. And making those priorities, and also being mindful of how long the structures are designed to last for based on the engineering information that we have. I also think that, as I recall, the reserve fund is really being spoken for at this time by like a lot of different pieces. So there's really not a whole lot left behind. I think we just need to be okay with starting the conversation of changing programs or redesigning what learning can look like and what that experience can be. I think, I would be advocating for a level fund from last year to this year, considering the 1.45 increase in expenses, but a 24% drop in revenue. If we were running any other business, you would not continue to follow that trend line. You would find a way to kind of curtail those costs. As a teacher, school is not business, but the tax implications and what our community members are going to feel are very real. I would be, in addition to considering like what funding would be available to bring the costs down, I think we need to have these hard conversations around, noticing the declining enrollment, and yet staffing has increased. That should be a conversation that we're not afraid to have. We're looking at needing to find between $400,000 and $600,000 to keep our property tax rate at 205. I would suggest that we have a backup plan just in case we don't have enough money in the reserves. We should have a hard conversation. Maybe it's related to classroom sizes. Maybe it's about finding alternative ways where kids can access additional options that don't necessarily require a teacher to be face-to-face with them. Maybe we do look at the long-term implications of the number of administrators that we have staffed for each building. we've deferred maintenance, but I think we've also deferred having hard conversations, and that really can't happen anymore. So that's my thought.
Good points, Keegan. I would say in terms of staff to student ratio, I'd have to look back at your chart there, Lori, but just anecdotally, as the Townsend chair, we did significant increase in the number of students to staff over the years, and I feel as though classroom sizes have actually increased in. I don't know if I can point to that in a number on a chart here, but I feel like we have had a lot of those discussions. The major discussion we haven't had is on building maintenance and repairs and deferring. It seems like every year we do make hard decisions, whether it be administrator or number of teachers, or going from having multi-level grades in a school. So we have had a lot of, I guess I don't want you to think that there haven't been a lot of hard discussions over the years in this regard. Is there more work to do? Absolutely. Of course we can do more. Joe, are there any other thoughts, comments?
Dana has his hand up.
Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, I was just going to say, at what part do we start putting this out to the communications committee to get, are we looking for feedback from the public at any point, or are we just keeping it amongst ourselves, into the budget committee, and then after that, do we start throwing it out? Just kind of curious, time frame wise.
Well, I'd say, certainly we can always, as the communications committee, put out what, our discussion was, summary, synopsis of things we talk about, directions that we may want to head, ideas on the table. Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Any other thoughts on directions to the budget committee?
I believe Ken was interested in joining the budget committee, considering that Lindsay had taken back her seat. I wasn't sure if maybe Ken wanted to speak to that.
I heard you had an opening.
I think Leanne is on that though, right? Don't we have? We better count them again.
She's Brookline.
Yeah, I'm on the budget committee.
So do we have sufficient numbers? I think so, right?
I thought that with Lindsay's resignation from that committee, that it created a freed up seat. So one out, one in would make it the same number of people.
I was just tired of hearing about that COLA number.
With Keegan, Mike, Leanne, me, and you, Al, that's 5. If we get another one, we would have a quorum of the board. So there really isn't an open seat.
We discussed this the last meeting, pretty thorough, and we were talking about bordering the quorum line.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, we cannot go to quorum.
And Bob Tebow has his hand up. So.
Oh, sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
Well, unrelated to this conversation, so if you guys want to finish this, I could jump in after.
No, go ahead.
I'm fine, but I would just reiterate to the committee that, and I've said this before, we should be setting a goal before we even go into looking at a budget of looking at that COLA number, and that should be the max that we increase, not we're hitting that every year. We want to get below that number so that our senior citizens can, because most of our geographic is the elderly, and they're the ones that are paying for this, and that's what they get for a lot of them get for an increase every year. And why not, and what they pay for insurance every year, that increase is gone anyway. For what they pay for their Medicare, it gets taken away from them anyway. That increase, don't let it fool you. It's not like they're making more money on you now, because their medical goes up every year too, and it usually goes up whatever the COLA is. Imagine that. So let's try to keep that budget down there, folks. I'd love to see a level funded budget. I might even shut up for a whole meeting if I saw that.
All right, appreciate it, Ken. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for the thoughtfulness that you guys have in approaching this, and I think as administrators, we know that it is the wrong time for so many things, and it's a complicated process that you guys are balancing, as Ken just pointed out, like some of the challenges that exist for some of our families that struggle. A couple of things I just wanted to mention. One of the things I learned, which may be news to some of you guys, may not be, but last week I heard this from a pretty good source, that of the increase at the state level for the statewide assessment, property tax, that there were a good chunk of it, 75%, I think, was not based on actual ed spending per se. And maybe Emily can jump in and help clarify this for me, but money going into the state teachers retirement system that needed to go in, and lost revenue from sales tax and rooms and meal tax during COVID have been significant contributors to some of those increases as well. So, that's why you see a significant jump in your tax rate when the budget is only up 1.5% from an expenditure side. So I just want people to be aware of those kinds of things that are playing into it. The economics of our state are also, obviously, because we have a statewide system, functioning in this system. So, and my numbers may be a little bit off, Emily. I'll let you. You may know more about the exact numbers, but it's a pretty high percent of that 10-cent increase from the state.
That and health insurance.
Of course, right.
All right, makes sense. All right, so we've heard a variety of opinions on what we should present, or not present, but task the budget committee with working on. Is it fair to say that we can use some of the reserve in order to work towards the property tax rate that we would like to achieve?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. Perfect. So could we task the budget committee, or the budget committee as well as the administration, to look at, you said the number was around 475,000. Is that right, Lori? For reserve to get to 205. Maybe some kind of gradients between 205 and 210, and then maybe potentially, if the administration has it, you could sharpen their pencil, see if there's any stone unturned to contribute. Perfect. That'd be great. Okay, no other questions? Let's move on to, are there any other questions? What's that?
Ken has his hand up.
Go ahead, Ken.
Real quick, you don't want to take, I would not even think about taking half of that reserve out. And the reason I say that is because you get one special ed student, just one special ed student in, and you're looking at a possible $150,000.
Yeah, whether we do that or not, yes, agreed. And he's frozen.
So the total goal then would be to find.
Oops.
No, I'm sorry. Did you guys hear that?
We heard about the first 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay, so yeah. Oh, we're back on the Brady Run screen. Wonderful. But what I was saying is we don't want to, even take out half of that 400,000. You get one special ed student in, and the cost to cover their IEP could be $150,000. Okay, and then if we don't have that money in a reserve, we're not going to be able to pay for it through the year, and we're going to have to borrow money. So, just pointing that out.
Nope, good point. Good point, Ken. Which is why I said, maybe there should be some kind of a range, 205 to 210, something like that. And then supplementally with, administration looking at any, nickel and dime stuff.
So Al, just to be clear, would we be out of place to ask for not only the combination of both the reserve fund and some cuts to the budget, being mindful of all of the things that we'll use the fund for that. We'll use the fund for that. Can we also have a nice, good, hard look at what, for level funding, we would be trimming out $479,668, or excuse me, did I say that right? Yeah, $479,668 to be level funded from last year to this year. It's an extra $4,000 to add to the conversation, but I would like to pursue that if possible, and that would bring a tax rate down. Level funded would be $2.04.
Of course, by what you're talking about for level funding, you're meaning offsetting the decrease in revenues. It's not really level funding. If we actually decrease by 479,000, we will have a negative in expenses, and Laura can come up with a number, but probably be between 10 and 15%.
Okay.
Well, maybe 10%.
Well, I was just looking at, like, last year we needed to come up after expenses and revenue. Last year, the fiscal year 21 was a budget of $10,742,786. And for the current budget as it is, we would need to, expenses minus revenue, we would need to come up with $11,222,454. I'm just curious, like, if we could match that 10.7 from last year to this year, that would bring you to the $2.04.
Right. $2.04, correct, which would be below the number which would keep us under the threshold.
And the reserve would stay in place, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. By not touching the reserve, you're just removing from the budget that amount.
That would be tough, I would think.
By just removing from the budget. I like how you make it sound like
Well, this is why I'm on the board, and I'm not the one that actually has to make the really hard decisions. I'm just making the.
Oh no, you're on the board, and we are making really hard decisions. I just would keep in mind that yes, this is a rather large budget of $12 million, but how much of that is truly discretionary, and how much can we can't just pull $479,000 out of thin air. That is things like deferred maintenance, things that we've kicked down the road for years and years, right? So it feels like a vicious circle of what we're talking about here, where we say we want to do what's best for our taxpayers, and yet we want to do the deferred maintenance. So which is it, right? So we're kind of talking out both sides of our mouth. I think we have to balance carefully what we do for the taxpayers, what we do for the students, and the administration. We have many people that we're speaking to and acting on behalf of. So I think we need to be very careful about that. And again, I'll just reiterate that you can't pull $479,000 out of thin air.
I appreciate that. And I spent a good deal of time talking with, our local town clerk's office, and talking with our commissioner from the tax department. I've had many conversations over the last week trying to understand this whole process and all of the different moving parts. But I know that the community of Jamaica is comprised of 450 residents, and 54% of them are the ones that qualify for the Homestead Act. Most others do not. And also 10% of the community, or not 10%, like 150 people, 150 residents are over the age of 65 and living on a fixed income. So there are a lot of pieces, and I am trying to be cognizant of all of those decisions and all of that deferred maintenance. However, past practice, based on how we've come to be in this position that we're in today, I think we need to be a little bit more open to the harder conversations and those harder decisions. That's my opinion.
Okay. No, thanks, Keaton. Absolutely. None of these decisions are easy. Absolutely, for sure.
Al, Bill's got his hand up.
Al, Bill's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
Tina has his hand up after that.
No problem. I just want to get some clarification on the two asks from the administrators. Does the board have direction to the budget committee to add those to draft 2 of the budget, to empower the budget committee to make a decision at the budget committee meeting whether or not to add it so that the full board can see it? Or is there any action that the board would like to take on those 2 asks?
I think out of fairness and for clarity, I would like to see what would it mean programmatically? What would it mean to the kids if we were to level fund? Because we know what it would mean to the taxpayers if we did. And I think that if we're thinking about communication and being clear in to get here, this is what it means, I think that would make for a nice conversation that we can have openly with our communities around what exactly this ask is.
Bill, can you speak to the 2 asks again? Sorry.
Sure. They're in your budget packet, but there's one for $128,000 for the adult learning.
Oh, got it. 128 and 40. Okay, got it.
Bob was going to try to get
$1,000.
some information.
I think we lost Bill.
You probably did, but basically, do you want those in the budget for or not?
We would like to see a cutoff, that we would like the administration to look up the cutoff on the adult learning as far as if we can get to what age is the cutoff for tuition reimbursement, or what do you call it? Counting them as on the ADM.
So the question, I think, from Bill is, do we want that to be sent to the budget committee as part of the budget for consideration?
Al?
Go ahead, Mike.
I think that the 40,000 that was kind of future planning might be a bridge too far right now. And I remember that Bob had said he was going to kind of put some feelers out. Personally, I really like that other program. But for me, I really want to see if, how realistic it is that we can get, even if we don't get 4 kids, if we get 2 or 3 kids, that's a different conversation. I know it's hard to get that commitment out of teenagers, especially during COVID and without having, 100% surety. But I think it warrants having that conversation to see what the interest level is, because otherwise I think that's a great program idea.
Yeah, totally. So maybe at this point, hold until we meet as a budget committee, and then at that point we could decide whether or not, based on information, to put it on the budget for the next full board.
That sounds fair enough.
Okay, go ahead, Lori.
So I'm just curious to know, I hear what Keegan is saying. She's asking for a reduction in expenses of the 479,000 to basically match the reduction in revenues that is happening. Do you also want to include a bond payment in that as well, so that becomes 579, or do you want to keep that bond payment separate at this point right now and just deal with what's in front of you?
I think it would be beneficial for us to have a real look at the actual numbers, doing none of the maintenance, and then having the bond conversation. Because I'm thinking about it in terms of, we know that the buildings need, that we have to make these capital improvements, right? And knowing what a bond could look like, understanding what those improvements would require, I think there's still kind of two separate lenses that we're looking at and considering as we're developing and continuing to refine this budget. If we do nothing and only match funds, that's conversation A, where you're taking away from expenses the $479,000. Obviously, that's a really big ask, and it's making a lot of, it's a philosophical conversation. It's a statement about our values. It's a much larger piece, and I understand that. I think including a bond payment, like maybe with, I would like to see them separate if I'm
Okay.
skipping over too many words. I'm sorry.
Got it.
Lori, I would say I'd like that. I mean, that's fine to see it separately, but also to know what that number is and what the implications are for the budget. I'll just get back to the point. We may say we're wanting to head in another direction and not defer maintenance and do the right things, but we're just not doing it if we don't at least look at what that deferred maintenance would look like for the budget. So many good things will happen by actually starting to do that maintenance. I think a lot of the community and the school, the benefits of it are taken away when you start to, you chip away at these things. And I guarantee you there are a lot of other schools around that didn't have the same issues with HVAC that we did because they had maintained their maintenance, right? So I don't want to be that district anymore. I want us to get back on track. So anyway, it's my 2 cents.
But I think it would make more sense to have them combined together. So if you wanted to do just the one where all costs are considered and we have a legitimate number to consider, I would make an appropriate sense. Yeah.
Okay, great. Joe, since I can't see hands, anybody have any questions?
There are no hands.
No hands. All right. Lori, is that enough to go on for the budget committee?
So let me just wrap up one more time. So I'm going to do some scenarios where the administration is tasked with finding $479,000 of expenses. We're also going to look at the deferred maintenance and what a bond cost could be in relation to that. We're also going to look at what adding some of the surplus, the fund balance, could look like as well in incremental using incremental amounts and what that would be for incremental tax rates. Are those, do I have it all?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think it's a hard and fast on the 479. I mean, so, like we talked about having, some gradients between 205 and 210. What does it look like? What dollar amount increases a penny of the property tax, just to kind of to see that.
That's kind of what jives with what I had as I was taking notes, because as before the budget committee meets, I'll end up talking to you a little bit about some of this too, I think.
Great.
You have Dana and Howie hands up.
Dana, go ahead.
Hey, I just want to throw it out there. Make sure we have as many options as we do, so we don't end up like we were last year, having budget kicked back at us, kicked back at us, kicked back at us. If we have some options ready to go, maybe we can only do this once or twice. But I got a feeling our first shot out, it's going to get voted down. So it would be good to have backup options and ready to go.
All right. Thanks, Dana. But I promise you this, we will not have 11 options. Not doing that again. Go ahead, Howie.
So Al, I'm with you on being responsible and taking care of maintenance, but at this stage of the game, maybe it would be more responsible to use that reserve fund for taking, biting off a chunk of the maintenance instead of taking out, floating another bond and getting us more into debt. And, chipping away at the maintenance using the reserve fund and putting a line in the budget to add some money to the reserve fund for the future maintenance. That seems to be like a more prudent option, and that the taxpayers would be more fond of. I mean, people are not going to be happy about voting for a bond on top of seeing their taxes go up statewide. So that's my 2 cents on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Howie. Appreciate it. So just for clarification, you're talking just putting in a number that was be more realistic with what we normally have for building and maintenance repairs.
Yeah, chip away at it. We don't have to do it all at once. And the other thing is, things are changing. I mean, we're not the only district in the state that is facing big infrastructure problems. Every district has been doing this. Every place has been deferring maintenance, not only in the state, across the country. So the winds, may blow in a different direction. I can remember in the past where the government has said, hey, all our schools are falling apart. We're going to offer you reduced rate loans. We're going to throw programs at you, and that may be coming down the pike. So, as much as I hate kicking the can down the road for another year, this might be a good year to kick the can down the road for another year and just do the basic maintenance we need out of the reserve fund, and see what happens next year.
Good point, Howie. And I think a lot of that will shake out with what Dana alluded to earlier, which would be the prioritization. So we'll look at the REDs this year, then maybe the must-haves. All right. Was there anybody else, Joe? No? Okay.
Nope.
How are we doing, Lori? Is that good?
That's fine. Just to throw out, to respond to Howie a little bit, just, the last time we met, the HVAC alone was $400,000 to $500,000, just to throw that number out. Like, that all needs to be upgraded to get to your 100%. So that's almost all of the fund balance.
That might be all we can do this year,
Absolutely. I'm just giving you context of what is out there on the docket to be paid for.
Yeah,
right off the bat.
It's going to be a tough sell to the taxpayers to vote for another bond.
Agreed.
Thanks, Howie. Thanks, Lori. All right. Are we good on that? Perfect. All right. Let's move on to HVAC workflow updates. Who's got that one? Bill's still there with us?
Was that hot breaking news document?
The HVAC workflow, yeah.
I would call on Medina.
I'm looking for...
He's probably got a better internet.
Mr. Medina, if you're there.
I am here.
All right.
So just to kind of recap where we are, West River is about 90% complete from the original project scope that we started with about 4 months ago. We did have a project meeting with Alliance Mechanical early last week, and we found out from their service installation team that they are down about 8 individuals that have either been in quarantine or are currently sick. So we did apply for an extension to the grant deadline through Efficiency Vermont, and we did find out late last week that we got approved. Alliance Mechanical is projecting to have the remaining 10% of the projects done by the end of January. Particularly those projects involve Townsend Elementary, the isolation room exhaust, and the control system. And for Leland and Gray, the isolation room and the PM repairs and air testing. So we're looking to pick that back up after the holidays, pending their service team is in good health and off quarantine. And we will continue to move forward from that point.
That's great news on the extension. That's excellent. Great. Anything else, Chris? Was that it?
That's it. That's down and dirty.
All right. Appreciate it. Okay. Approval of minutes of November 16th meeting. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Keegan. Do I have a second?
Ken seconds.
Thank you, Ken. Any discussion?
Bob, does your hand have to do with the minutes? Okay. Get you right after.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thumbs up. All right. Thank you. Motion carries. On to student reports. Is this you, Bob? Student?
Not for a long time, actually, but I do have just a HVAC question for you guys. So as Chris informed us today that that work, the extension was through the end of January, that could potentially take that entire time for it to get completed, which would put us potentially past the anticipated start date that we set for Leland and Gray. There are 2 start dates, one for middle, one for high school. So I wanted to come to you guys just to, because I want to be able to communicate with staff and with families. What do you guys want to do with that? Do you want us to proceed with our planned start date, or do you want us to push that start date until the airflow testing has been completed?
Bob, any kind of ballpark on when that would be? With some point early in February, or?
Well, I think he felt that we would have the report back by the end of the month. I would think, depending on what the report says, we would need a week or so to turn around and plan for that. So, I mean, in my mind, February 8th would be kind of a reasonable start date given that. If it's earlier, it's earlier, but people are expecting it to be in mid to late January. So I want to be able to be super clear with people if that's not the case as soon as I possibly can.
Okay. What's the board's feeling? I mean, I kind of feel like this is similar to Townsend. We obviously want to wait until we see the results and then kind of go from there. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. So February 8th-ish or whenever, in that range?
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Okay, now moving on to student reports, and who do we have out there reporting for us? I see a Katie Hazelton.
I'm
Katie.
here tonight.
Oh, and Ansley.
It's just me.
Oh, okay.
Not much to report. We're just so remote. Just happy and hoping to be back in the building as soon as possible. And that's pretty much it.
Ansley, not to put you on the spot, but how is it going for you remotely?
It's going fine. I enjoy it. It's very independent, but I mean, I like that, but I want to be back with my classmates soon.
Completely understandable, and we want to do that for you.
Good.
Thanks, Ansley.
Thank you.
All right, principal reports. Bob, you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'm happy to. I first want to start by apologizing for not getting you one. I think this is the first one I've missed since I've been employed at Leland and Gray, but things have been a little hectic. I will get you one for next month that will detail both months worth of stuff, but I just want to highlight some really positive news, two really positive news items actually for you guys just to be aware of. One, we had a project that was done by our leadership program, leadership class that Marnie Testo teaches in conjunction with the Tri-M Honor Society, which is a musical honor society, and James Pexock. They had their students put together a program where we solicited books, gently used or new books to be donated, and thrilled to announce that we delivered to all 3 of the elementary schools a packet of books, multiple sets of books for each student in our district for elementary school. and they were wrapped and packaged in the whole 9 yards, and they were accompanied by handmade bookmarks that the kids designed and delivered with it as well. And it was amazing. A very, very cool thing to see the high school students reaching out to the elementary kids in that way, and supporting an academic pursuit like reading at the same time. So wanted to share that with you guys. It was a very cool story. We did send some stuff to the Reformer in the comments to get that out. I don't know if it's come out yet or not, but try to get some press on that. And the second thing I just wanted to let you guys know about, we are utilizing some underused funds right now from sports that have not been accessed due to some of the COVID stuff, to work on an RFP for the constructing of I'm going to call it a ropes course, but it's really an adventure course, I guess you would say, to be constructed at Leland and Gray for use for the entire district, probably the entire SU, actually. And it includes training for a certain number of adults in that program. And so our phys ed department, again, in conjunction with Marty, really put together a nice proposal, and we're working with Chris Medina to get that money out to use some unspent financial stuff from this year's unused expenses that from the athletic program primarily to make that happen. So we're hoping that we'll have a spring construction on that, and then we'll be able to utilize that, like I said, for kids from the elementary school, sports programs, leadership, drama, music. Everybody will be able to access that, and at a time when kids are going to be coming out of this isolation, to have something where they can really build leadership skills and it really focuses on social emotional learning, is really going to be necessary and important. So we're super excited to have that happening this spring. So I just want to share that good news with you guys as well.
Thanks, Bob. That's fantastic news. The books, that's great. And the ropes course, fantastic. Anybody have any questions for Bob? All right, moving on to, I'm sorry, was there a question? Joe? No? Okay.
Tammy.
All right. Sorry, go ahead, Craig. Oh, we'll go to Scott.
Sorry, Tammy's hand is up.
Oh, Tammy's hand is up. I'm sorry.
Can't ignore that one, Al.
Jeez, she didn't knock down my door.
I just wanted to add that in terms of this adventure course, we talk about what things can we do that makes Leland and Gray stand out from other schools when kids have choice. And by adding an adventure course to our school is going to be huge attraction to choice towns and to bring kids to Leland and Gray. I really look forward to the build and the training and all. I have some experience with it already. I'm very excited, and I appreciate the support.
I'll just throw in, I saw the designs, and I think it's great. I think our kids are going to get a great benefit from it.
Agreed. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Craig.
All right, it's good to be back. I'm going to bring a little bit of different energy this time instead of asking for more money. The principal report is just the principal report, but what I really want to talk to you guys about is just the opportunity that we had to put together after our last meeting of being able to have kids back in the building. So I just want to tell you what our plan is, talk about what the results were, and just thank you again. Again, the community was very supportive of getting back into the school. Overwhelmingly. So the plan is on Tuesday and Wednesday when we return to school, the 19th and the 20th, just like Newbrook did and Jamaica did, we're going to have half days to get the kids adjusted so we can go over our safety protocols for COVID. It's been almost a year since some of these kids have been in. For pre-K, it might be their first experience back at school. So we're going to start off slow for the first couple of days, and then we're just going to go right into schoolwork and academics. But the results of the people enrolled. So we had our enrollment at the time, we had 91% opt for in-person learning. So really, really overwhelming. And we actually pulled in 5 students who opted for homeschool earlier on. So actually we're pulling more numbers in. And through my conversations with Heidi today, I have to go do some room measurements for pre-K to make sure that we're able to get as many pre-K kids in as we want, because pre-K families are now calling to get people enrolled there. So everyone is really excited to get back in. The conversations between myself and the staff have started, and we've set an academic plan out. We're getting people ready for the protocols and safety stuff, but we're very happy. We're all very excited. We look forward to having people in, and just really getting to it, getting back to sort of the old typical, any step towards normal is great. So thank you guys for allowing me that opportunity. And as Chris said, that stuff will be done in January. So we'll be good to go.
That's great. Thanks, Craig. All right, any questions? If not, we will go to Pam.
Good evening. Thank you. You do have my principal's report, which was submitted to the superintendent. I did want to highlight, thank you, Bob, for highlighting the book drive that we worked together with the Leadership Seminar and the Music Honor Society. As in my report, over 600 books were collected. So it grew from just one elementary school to all 3 elementary schools. So thank you for the kids. Teachers helped with wrapping, and I think everybody was just glad to be back. And even though they were socially distanced and masked, I think everybody was glad to be back. The books were delivered to the elementary schools on Friday and on Monday. Staying with that, we also had a sizable donation from the Stratton Foundation of boots and winter clothing for our families. And we've made a new partnership with Neighborhood Connections out of Londonderry, which has reached out to us to support families, and they delivered goodie bags today for activities for the children to do over the holiday, as well as the school club has delivered the usual arts and crafts gifts for the children to make, which is usually done on site, but that was done this year through a bag for each child. So something went home for each child as well. I put the grade configurations in there, and the other thing I just wanted to share, due to so many changes at Jamaica Village School over the last few years, we're working with the school psychologists and the school counselors to do some visioning and work on the mission and belief statements in collaboration with the rest of the staff at JVS. So we've had a couple meetings already in terms of building professional collaboration and community. And I think that will not only serve our professional staff as well as serving our children. We're thrilled to be back on site. Attendance has been great. We have a meeting every Monday morning with the children, and I send out a writing prompt every Wednesday for attendance, and they send that back to me and to their teachers. So there's been a lot of interaction both on site and with our remote students. So we look forward to a little bit of a break. We have activities that are being sent home with kiddos to keep them busy, and we'll be back and ready to go on January 4th remotely. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Pam. Appreciate it. Scotty, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to take my time to just to highlight some thankfulness that I have for the central office. In October, I was told that our administrative assistant at Newbrook Elementary was going to need to go on extended leave. As you can imagine, during COVID, at a time when it's really hard to hire really anybody, I was a little flummoxed, I guess, and I found somebody who could be our receptionist. But the training that goes into the purchasing and using our purchasing software and our attendance for staff and our attendance software for staff is just a lot. And so I called Lori Garland at the central office, and I just asked her. I was like, so what could you foresee that you could help us? How could you help us to do this seamlessly? I really felt that it needed to be seamlessly because we're in the middle of COVID and we're all hands on deck in the school, and I just couldn't put another thing or another stress or another frustration for the teachers. Well, Lori, it was funny. It was a Friday, and Lori said, "Let me call you Monday morning." Monday morning, she had a plan all worked out, and we've had support along the way that has been literally seamless. And I just can't thank Lori and Bill and Heidi Russ and all the folks at the central office for just kind of ganging up to help us. And on January 4th, our administrative assistant is coming back. And I've got to say that the reason why we're able to do this is because we all know and care about each other, and that we all want each other to succeed, and that all of our success is kind of bound up in each other's success. I know I'm really looking forward to Craig and his team just killing it when we come back. And I know that his parents want it too. And it's those kinds of things that really makes it great to work in our school district and our supervisory union. So I just wanted to say thanks to Lori. I also want to say that the 20 inches of snow that's on our playground, I have recess duty every day, and I'll say that we spent some money, all of our Hannaford money we spent on toys for a touchless recess, but there's nothing better than good old fashioned snow to keep kids busy and healthy busy too. It looks great. So if you're ever driving by at lunchtime and you want to, you can't really visit in the building, but we could take a walk outside and you can see how fun recess can be when you have 20 inches of snow and a lot of kids that are dying to play with each other. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Scotty. Appreciate it. All right. Superintendent Cabinet Report. Bill, did you want to highlight anything?
All right. Can you hear me better now?
There we go. We got you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just highlight a couple things. One is the waiting study advocacy is getting some energy around our supervisory union. And so I would expect our board to be asked in January whether they want to be a part of advocacy to the legislature once they get into session. So just something to keep in mind that in January, a conversation may be brought forth about doing some advocacy for the waiting study. So I just wanted to update everybody on that. And then along those lines that Lori mentioned earlier about a new stimulus package, the superintendents have a conference call with Representative Welch on Wednesday. And so we'll try to get some information about how that's going to play out for the school system and the state as well. Everything else is really in our written report. And just to not contradict Scotty, but just letting you know, we don't do any ganging up on other people in our districts. Just want to make that clear.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill? No? Okay. Communicate, if I can speak it, communication committee update.
We're actually going to be meeting on January 6th to kind of square away our plans of how we wanted to present the budget in the 3 different lenses that we discussed earlier in December. We are hoping to create this model in which we can consider the implications of our budget as it's designed and as it continues to be refined right up until it goes before the public to be voted on, looking at the implications for what this budget means to students and their experiences through programming, as well as the implications for what the taxpayer is going to be experiencing based on the decisions that are being made, as well as the long-term vision for what we hope our district will become as soon as we begin the process of picking up where we left off in the spring related to that long-term vision planning of what our future looks like.
Great.
So more on that after January 6th.
Excellent. Thank you, Keegan. Appreciate it. Budget committee update. Joe, is there anything else we need to say?
I was going to say, you had it. You saw the budget and the work, and we've got more work to do. So no, not much.
Great. Yes. All right. approve financials.
What about policy?
Oh, I apologize.
They're the next one on the agenda, aren't they?
Did I? Oh, it goes to
Oh,
approve
did I jump
financials
ahead?
and
Sorry.
then it goes to policy.
Apologize.
No problem. No problem. So approve financials. Lori or Bill, refresh my memory on this one.
Sorry, I don't have that open yet. So this would be the, I'm assuming that Joe and Trish got a file to approve.
Oh, yes, of course.
I do remember getting that email, and I know that I have not looked at it at all.
Okay, so I think we should table it till next meeting.
I apologize.
I'm guilty as well. I will look at that this week.
All right, great. So we'll table that till the next full meeting. Great. Mike.
Thanks, Al. So we had our first EPIC policy meeting. Policies B3, B4, B5, B6, C1, C2, and C4 we reviewed with no changes recommended. So those are good. There was 2 policies we pulled out because we're waiting on, we asked the administration for some feedback on, and then there was 1 policy that we pulled out because it had a little bit of boilerplate left in it still. It was innocuous. It was the transportation, and it says, we do provide transportation, and it simultaneously said we do not provide transportation. So we'll make that change and we'll bring it back through the board at our next meeting.
Okay. So at this point, no action.
No, we just reviewed those other ones, and a couple got pulled out pending clarification or minor edits.
Okay, great. Thank you for your good work. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, well, that concludes the normal part of our meeting, and I will entertain a motion to move into executive session for negotiations and personnel.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we just have to wait for everybody else to depart.